All right, here to discuss this with me now is LNP Senator Gerard Rennick. Welcome, Senator. It's great to have you on Bernardi. And before I kick it off, mate, I've got to tell you, I've been watching some of your speeches on YouTube. They've just been absolutely amazing. They've been a great credit to you and to the Senate, and the Greens hated them, which recommends them even more. So congratulations. But how concerned should we be about these proposed CBDC that looks to be coming down the pipe here in Australia?
Well, good evening, Corey, and good evening to your listeners. I think we should be concerned, but the question is what are we going to do about it? As your introduction, you talked about how governments are getting more and more control over people's individual lives. So given what we've seen in the last 3 years with the COVID overreach, given what we saw with the renewable energy target, it started off at 5%, went to 23%, 43% by 2030, and then net zero by 2050. Superannuation started off at 2%. It's going to 12% by 2025. Labor are talking about it going to 15% in the term after that, lifting it to 15%. So, we've always got to assume the worst when it comes to governments, that they always want, more and more control. And so, therefore, we do have genuine, valid reason to be concerned about the digital currency. Yet again, though, on the other hand, we've got, while the government wants more control, there's much less accountability. The RBA is an independent body that basically has got away with jacking interest rates down to zero and then jacking them back up, 8 interest rate rises in a row. No one gets sacked. Norman Swan from the ABC, no one's held accountable at the ABC. No one's held accountable at the Bureau of Meteorology. So we have got, a bureaucracy which is effectively, as far as I'm concerned, our shadow government. And I can, having been through 3 years of estimates now with the bureaucrats, they do nothing but obfuscate and lie in estimates. We've got a much bigger problem here, is how do we make governments much more accountable? Because at the moment, they are, and their bureaucracies are getting away with anything they want to.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. I think a lot of people are losing faith in governments, and I don't just mean this government, I think government overall, because the ministers don't seem to want to stand in the face of the bureaucracy, and it's like we're entering a European Union type thing where the politicians, say whatever they want, but the bureaucrats end up doing whatever they want as well. And you made that point very clear about the ABC, the Reserve Bank. Are the Reserve Bank up to the task of having this power of a central bank digital currency over us, or is it something that will be the purview of government eventually?
Well, this will be the interesting question, because the RBA is technically an independent statutory authority. So they're the last people you would want in control of a digital currency. Not that you'd really want a digital currency in the first place. I mean, ultimately, currency should be limited to a monetary, a form of a monetary instrument. It shouldn't actually be used to control your own personal behaviour. But so really, it's a clever use of the word currency, but I'd call it more of a credit score or something like that, where they're actually, controlling you, and really we're probably not doing it justice by calling it a currency. I can't think off the top of my head what I would call it, but it's more like a big brother form of control, and it needs a word that, is more akin to that, rather than calling it a currency, which I think gives it some sort of licence that it shouldn't deserve.
Yeah, well, that's a very good point too. And we've seen how it can be misused. I mean, let's just think about Canada, for example. It's meant to be a Western democracy. It's run by Justin Trudeau, and yet he froze the bank accounts of people who were protesting against his government, entirely legitimately, it turns out, and entirely reasonably, because the government was lying to them a lot. Now, that could happen here. As soon as we're purely digital and cash is no longer available, or people aren't accepting it, you could find yourself frozen out for spurious reasons. You've liked the wrong post on Twitter, or you've bought the wrong thing in the shop. It's a Chinese sort of social credit system could come into play very easily, couldn't it?
That's exactly right. And I think PayPal tried to do the same thing as well. It got quickly shut down. And then I think we've seen in Oxford this week, they're talking about restricting how far people can travel to try and reduce their energy consumption. So you can see how it's all coming together from the point of view of Big Brother, whereby they can combine some sort of form of digital currency, still waiting on a better term, with your climate actions, with your, your views on social media, etc. You can see how it's all becoming more and more centralised. We've got our MyGov account now, which encompasses our Medicare data, our immunisation data, our tax file data. So the world is getting a much smaller place, and technology has brought us a lot of good things. But at the same time, it can be used for good and it can be used for bad. And obviously, we need to have much greater systems of accountability and transparency when it comes to technology today.
And you know what? We need more integrity too. We were told when MyGov came in that our data would always be safe. It would never be misused. We had those QR code scan-ins. All of them were, maybe well-intentioned promises, but they were just lip service because they were all treated in a way that they promised us wouldn't be. The big question here, though, Senator, is how inevitable is this, and what can Australians do to push back?
Well, it's inevitable as much as we let it happen. And unfortunately, I think many people today are ambivalent or feel I've spoken to a lot of people lately who feel just overwhelmed that they can actually change the system. And a part of my role as a politician and as a so-called political leader is to try and keep people motivated to stay in the system. And I've been trying to get people, as I say, you don't have to wake up the entire masses, because a lot of people, they're bogged down in their day-to-day lives, whether it's, with work issues, raising children, their community service, their sporting clubs, whatever. But the world is ultimately run by the 1% of the 1%, and we really need to focus our energy on that 1% of the 1%. And the best way to do that, and I say this to people, it's not that hard to join the coalition and to have a say within the party branches, because you get to meet politicians face to face if you join the party. You can vote in the pre-selection, whenever they come up. And that's the way I think we really need to do it, because, if you take last year with the mandates, I think we had 30 or 40,000 people march up here in Brisbane, and, quite frankly, the protest didn't really achieve a lot. But, that's quite a lot larger than the number of people in the coalition. If they all joined a political party, the same political party, and I know yourself tried to have a go with your own party, probably didn't succeed like you wanted to. We really need to focus the conservative forces. And I say conservative forces, but it's more than that. It's about the little guy standing up for the rights of the little guy against Big Brother. And I think, we really need to also define the argument today. But I think the old dichotomy between the left and right is dead, and it is now about the little guy, which makes up about 90 to 95% of the population, standing up against that small percentage of people who are controlling the rest of the country. And that's our bureaucrats, the unions, the superannuation fund managers, and the corporate elites now, who effectively, they're no longer on the side of capitalism, i.e. risking your own capital productivity. They too are driven by ideology. They're handpicked by their fund managers, who are handpicked by the superannuation funds, which are picked by the union funds. So we've got to push back, because the Marxists and the communists have marched not just into the bureaucracy, but into our education system, into our corporate boardroom, throughout the COVID period, into the doctor's waiting room, into our hospitals. So we have the numbers on our side, but we have to get much more organised, and we have to concentrate our energy into the one body, which I believe is the coalition, to push back against Labor. And that will also require elected members to stand up and do their job and stand up for those values of, protecting the dignity and worth of every individual, freedom of speech, freedom of conscience, reward for effort, family values, and not let the government take complete control of our lives.
Senator Gerard Rennick, you are one of those who has stood up right through these last 3 years, and more strength to your arm, more credit to you, and beautifully put. Thank you very much for joining me on Bernardi tonight.
Authorised G. Rennick, LNP Chermside.